Oh, good morning and welcome. So this is one of my 60 conversations for my 60th year on this amazing planet to celebrate. And I was just saying to Vicki before I came on, it's given me a fantastic excuse to reach out to people that potentially, you don't connect with as often as you would like, to say, hi, fancy an inspiring conversation. And it was actually, this was something I was going to share with Vicki, but I'll share it with everyone. One of the main reasons that I'm reaching out, and I reached out and spoke to Vicki, was Lucy, my lovely niece. I'm sure most of you know Lucy, but if you don't, check her out on Facebook, Lucy Sheffield. She's an amazing artist. So Lucy does some stuff with the lovely Vicki, and she came back from a retreat they had been running, and she just said to me, "Oh, Deb," she said, "you and Vicki just need to connect. You need to speak." And I was like, "Oh, do we? Oh, okay." And then I was just kind of and then the next thing, do you know what? Okay, Lou, why don't I reach out and say to Vicki, fancy a conversation? So that's how this conversation came about. So I would love it, Vicki, if you would introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and then let's see where this conversation goes.
Oh, thank you so much for reaching out. It's so lovely to talk to you. It feels like it's been quite a long time.
Way too long.
Yes. I think the first time I met you was probably at your retreat, and that must have been, I think it might be coming up to 2 years ago.
Oh my God.
Amazing. That was beautiful. So I am this is the interesting thing, isn't it? What am I? Well, I could tell you anything at all. I could tell you all my old programs. I could tell you everything I used to be, or I could tell you everything I'm creating myself to be now. Essentially, I'm a health and wellbeing coach. That's the current.
Squishing all of
it. Yeah, exactly. The current little. Let's put a label on there so that people can understand vaguely what that might mean. So I love nothing more than to work with people to help them see their full potential, their unlimited potential. That for most of us, we live in a limited way. So that's what I do now, and I've been doing that for 2.5 years, I guess. And that kind of came about, again, it's an amazing thing, isn't it, when you kind of follow life's little breadcrumbs. So I had my own business previous to this, still going, and I just didn't feel there was something that wasn't right, and I couldn't put anything on it. I couldn't understand it because everything in the external world looked perfect. I had a textbook, like there's nothing to be miserable or upset about, or so there was a lot of confusion, because I just didn't feel that way. There was something inside me that just didn't feel right. And I didn't tell anyone that. I just, I kind of went through my life as if everything was fine, and inside it wasn't fine. And so I'd been doing a lot of self-development work, just the usual kind of trail of stuff that one tries along the road. And I then was chatting to an old university friend, and he pointed me in the direction of Michael Neill and said, have a read of, I can't remember which book it was, Inside Out Revolution, I think. Have a read of that. That's the only book you will ever need, or it's the only person you'll ever need to you can stop this whole search in self-development. Just go there. So I read it and I went back to him and I kind of went, yeah, it was good. It was interesting. I'm not sure it was the only thing I ever need. Kind of left it at that. And he came back to me and said, okay, check out Nicola Bird. She's got some amazing courses, got a great website, lots of information on there. Go and check her out. So being my seeking, searching self, like I have to do something because there's something wrong. Went straight to Nicola Bird's website and came across her free audio. So she had a free audio at that point on the website. And I think it was called Freedom from Anxiety, something like that. And I thought, well, it doesn't really apply to me. I'm not anxious, but I'll listen to it anyway. Listened to it, and about 5 minutes in, just kind of got stopped in my tracks because what she was saying was exactly what I was experiencing. And at that point, I had no idea that I had anything to do with anxiety. Like, that was something other people had. That was something that people had who had something to be anxious about. I didn't have anything to be anxious about. So that didn't apply to me. That was never anything in my vocabulary. It was something that other people experienced. I'd worked with homeless people for about 9 years in my 20s. You know, yes, they suffered with anxiety, and very rightly so. You know, they had nowhere to live, and they couldn't work, and you know. So that was where my thinking was. But I stopped in my tracks by what she was saying, and what she basically was pointing to was, your experience comes from the inside, is created from within, from the thoughts and beliefs that are paid attention to, I guess. And I was like, oh my gosh. And in that moment, I realized that I kind of was living in my future constantly, living in the what ifs. What if this happens? What if that happens? You know, just basically creating like horrendous scenarios and then wondering why I felt horrendous. So that's where it all started, really. I did some of her courses and just could see and feel like this massive weight lifting. It was as if I'd been carrying this backpack around with me that was filled with boulders that I could find, you know, like the boulders were just kind of being thrown out, and there was a much greater lightness, just a sense of lightness, and nothing external changed, but the sense, like people always say, there's that was that sense that everything was different. And because of that, I was just fascinated by that, and how transformative what I had understood was, and how I wanted to share that with other people. So I then went on to train with Nicola to be a little peace of mind practitioner, so 3 principles practitioner. And then since then have kind of worked with all sorts of different mentors and coaches, and yeah, and so that sort of evolved. But that's what I use as the basis to my coaching. So
the thing that really hit me in your story then that you were sharing, which I actually didn't know about you, was the fact that you didn't know that you were anxious. And do you know what, when I ended up in a women's refuge, as potentially you know, and I did not know I was in a relationship in that way. I had not, you know, and exactly the same thing happened to me. There was actually stuff going on with my children, and I reached out to a doctor and a health visitor because of problems with my children. And then when they turned up at my house to have a conversation with me, and gave me a leaflet about some stuff, the leaflet was like reading about my life, but I hadn't realized, I hadn't seen that was who I was. You know, other people are in those kinds of relationships. Other people have those kinds of problems. I don't. And, you know, there's just something not right with what's going on with me, but I don't know what's not right. But that's, you know, it had never occurred to me. And I had exactly the same experience of like being really, really shocked. So I think it is interesting, isn't it, when even like, I know that both of us are in the industry of helping people and we put this out, but even when you speak about these things, people could potentially be like, yeah, I don't need that, because that's not what's wrong with me. And I guess it's looking back to ourselves as well and seeing, I know one of the things I keep seeing is, bring this back to yourself. If you're seeing something out here, there's something going on in here. So actually take a look, because it is amazing how clever we are at not seeing these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, I could see that other people were anxious and that other people were struggling, which was the indicator, like you say. I mean, what you see out in the world is a mirror of what's going on inside you, right? So, but I didn't know that either. No. I had no idea. And I, you know, to me, it was like I'd grown up, I guess, with a kind of worrying mum. Like a mum who was a what-ifer, I guess, as well. And it was just a learned behavior. You know, that's all the only way that I can see it. It's completely learned. And it was so normal. Like I can remember being really small, and not being able to sleep and going downstairs and sitting on my mum's lap, and it was all about a test that was happening tomorrow, and mind had created into some massive like awful thing that I'd never be able to do because I wouldn't be able to remember anything, like even at the age of 5, that imagination was being kind of used, if you like, for creating nightmares. And I didn't know that there was any other way.
And we use it against ourselves, and I guess the people around us don't know that. Like you say, that behavior, that's the behavior we see around us, that behavior is modeled, and then when we do it, those people who love us the most, they don't realize what it is we're doing. They think what we are doing is perfectly normal because they've always done it and it was modeled to them. Because that's what I see, when I look back. I had, like you by the sound of it, I had a good childhood, but my mum and dad modeled a lot of things to me that were incredibly unhealthy behaviors because that was all that they knew. Absolutely. I think my parents would be horrified and absolutely devastated if they, and there's this isn't about blame at all. And, we make of these things what we make of them. And I can even see now with like my children and my grandchildren, I do my best to live what, practice what I preach, live what I talk about, do this. But I can equally see what their mind makes up about it.
Yeah.
Like I can't know what their mind is going to make up about it.
No.
To the best of my ability, I point them to the fact that their mind is going to make up things, and they are going to make up things, and an understanding of what that is and what that means. But all of us will get thinking, and that thinking will at times look incredibly real to us when it is a completely made up scenario that yes. And that's what being human is, I guess. But then that sounds, I don't know, that sounds a little bit like doom and gloom, and what I see is there is so much fun and hope. And one of the things that I wanted to speak to you about, because one of the things that I have seen on this journey, I've dived deeply into the 3 principles and other spiritual understandings, and very much heard people say this is all you will ever need and this will end it and stop searching and all of these kinds of things. And I see that and totally respect all that. I also see that we are creative beings. We are human beings. We are here, we're on the most gorgeous planet, and it's kind of like if we are pulled towards something it's like, I take my grandchildren to the park and they go wild and play and do all things. Why? What's the point? Why? You've been on the slide 27 times. You've run around loads of times. Why do we need to play these games? Why do we need to do these things? But we're alive, we're here, we're having a human experience. My life is great. I love my life, but I also love exploring. I love finding out more about who I am, what's going on. And I know that you recently, fairly recently, have got into the being movement and all of that kind of thing. And I have seen that has had an impact on you. And what I love about these things, I was actually listening to, I think it was Joe Vitale, just a little thing that came up on my YouTube this morning, just a couple of minutes thing. And he was talking about the law of attraction and then something else that he had done, and almost kind of saying, but this negates everything. And I think what I am really seeing now is nothing absolutely negates anything. It's it's not. I know that I am whole and complete, and there is absolutely nothing I need to complete me. But I'm here in like the most, it would be like being in a museum or being in when I went to Scotland in August, we went to the huge museum place there, and it was fascinating. It was great. We were like all over the floors, all looking at all of these things. It was brilliant. Didn't need to do any of it, but it was great fun.
Yeah.
Kind of that's where I feel I've got to. It's like, I don't need to do anything, but I love it. I enjoy it. I like it. And I wouldn't say that I am seeking to fill a hole in myself anymore. It more looks to me as if I am looking at, how do I show up continually as being the best version of me? You know, how do I model the best thing I can to my grandchildren? How do I model that to my clients, to myself? How do I do that? So I'm going to stop worming, but I really love to hear, your experience of what this, because the other thing that I see is nothing is right for everybody. No one thing is a complete fit for everybody. It doesn't matter what it is, and so so tell me about that, your experience of that, what that's opened up for you.
There's so much in that, isn't there? Because right, that there's so many it seems like there's so many portals to the same thing. Yes. Ultimately, what we are exploring is what we really are. That and there can be so many ways to explore that. For some people it might be yoga, other people it might be meditation, other people it's through religion, other people it's non-duality, it's the being movement, it's three principles, whatever. It's like, it doesn't matter. There is no, and I love what you said, like there's no rules, there's no need to. It's like, what are you nudged to do? What feels fun? Like it feels fun to practice yoga, so you practice yoga, and in that process of practicing yoga you get to understand something more about your body and what is going on and what's your potential, I guess. So I love that, and I love that whole idea that I've heard so much in the three principles of there's nothing you need to do, which is true in a wider sense. But that doesn't mean, and for a long time I took it to mean, and I know people take it to mean, because I've got clients that come to me and ask the question, take it to mean that there's no, like they can throw out the meditation, throw out the yoga, throw out the medication, throw out whatever. And it's like, no, it doesn't mean that at all. It's about really, really tuning into what's right for you in this moment. And that journey is a beautiful one, because it feels to me that when the time is right, and it's that saying, isn't it, when the time's right the teacher arrives, or whatever it is, but it's like all through, and I look back at my life in every moment, in all of it, I can see that there was something extra beyond my intellect that was guiding me towards things. Like, things would appear and be interesting, and I would be interested and learn about it, and then that would lead to something else, and then and that's how my whole life has gone when I look at it. But I never realized that. I thought it was me doing it. I thought it was me making things happen. But actually, looking back at it now, I really see that how did I know to do that next thing? It just evolved. Like I was following the kind of following the passion, if you like, following the interest.
I like that.
So yeah. And when you were talking about creation, I mean, that for me is like fascinating. Like fascinating. I'm like, I just am so fascinated in that right now. That's my passion. And it kind of started, I suppose, with suddenly having this idea that popped into my head out of nowhere. I want to learn how to paint. And that came on the flip side of, I'm not a creative person. Like, I'm not someone who's artistic or whatever. So I could this idea popped in, and then there's this old kind of idea that I had around not being creative and not being that kind of person. And I'd had an experience of cold water swimming where I had this idea that there was no way in the world I was going to go in cold water, because I've got Raynaud's disease, I'll never warm up, it'll kill me, I'll have a heart attack, blah, 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 blah. So I was like, I'm not doing that, that's crazy. And then a friend of mine, who Julie, lovely Julie Clooney, amazing dog behaviour person.
Absolutely. Look up Julie Clooney.
Look her up, yeah. If you have a dog. I was watching her, and she goes swimming in the winter in Scotland in the sea, and I'm like, what on earth is going on here? Like, there's something going on here. She loves it, and I'm going, that's mad. If I didn't have the thinking about I've got Raynaud's, I never warm up, blah blah blah, what would happen?
Yeah.
And in that moment, I saw that, like, when thought is suspended, if you like, when it's not paid attention to, then a new possibility opens up. And I went in cold water. I swam. I didn't even have to swim. I stayed warm, just standing, chatting to her. I got out. I was warm. I wasn't cold at all. I was invigorated and warm for the rest of the day. Totally different from what my mind had created it would be. And that really fascinated me. And so when this idea of I'd like to learn how to paint came in, and the old idea of I'm not creative was there, I was like, okay, well, what happens if I just don't, let's just put that to one side and see what's possible without that. And of course, I was coaching an ex-art teacher. Of course I was. so there we are, they're placed right in front of me. And so I started having lessons with her, which has been amazing. And it's just really helped me to see that anything can be created. I can show up to a canvas, and I can have the whole story of I don't know what I'm doing, I can't do this, I don't, I'm not creative, blah blah blah. And whilst that's playing loud and at the forefront of the mind, there's an experience of like, no, this is horrible, it feels horrible, I can't do it, all of that kind of happening. But when that's noticed and just allowed, then something else emerges. And that has been fascinating for me, like this whole process of, okay, yeah, all of that can be there. There's a whole load of conditioned beliefs and thoughts that whirl around and around and come back and back and back that seem like the truth. And they can be there, and that's fine. And at the same time, something completely different can be happening. The opposite from what this is saying can be happening. So this can be saying whatever it likes, but there's a completely different possibility available when it's not kind of really listened to or paid attention to. And so the whole painting journey for me has been really incredible, just to see over and over again what's possible, what gets created when a different story is kind of created, if you like. There's an old pattern of behavior, there's an old pattern of thoughts and beliefs that I now see are completely innocently acquired by an amazing system that's set to learn, that's set to just soak up information. And it did that job incredibly well. It's doing that job incredibly well. It did it all my life incredibly well. It soaked up information. It had, it interpreted experiences, and behavior and actions has come from that. So there's all these beliefs of like, I'm not good enough, I can't do that, I'm not creative, whatever, that have been just absorbed somehow or created somehow, that have been effectively played out my whole life without me realizing. And now I've come to this point where I see more and more what that program is, what those beliefs are, what those ideas are. I see them, I see how innocently they've been acquired. And it's like, well, I'm creating based on that. I'm creating a life based on that program. It isn't me. It's just these bunch of stuff that's being picked up. So if I'm doing that unconsciously, I'm doing that. I'm creating through that every day without even realizing it. What's possible if I create a new program, if you like I upgrade this program. And for me, it's like this conversation, being immersed in such a passionate interest in understanding how experience is created, I guess. In immersing myself in that, the system is learning something different.
Yeah.
And so to me, it is exactly like a computer. You know, I've got an operating system. We all have an operating system. It's the beliefs and the experiences and the thoughts and whatever that we've innocently picked up. And we operate based on that. Completely innocently, completely unconsciously, it's just how we work. And then seeing that, and like I say, the opportunity then is to upgrade it consciously.
Yes.
So I consciously get to create who I'm going to be. And we can be anything, right?
Yep.
Like literally anything. And as soon, you know, so instead of I'm not creative being the operating system, which means that there's no creativity, you know, there's no deliberate kind of following of creative nudges, if you like, you know, no painting happening, no whatever it might be. You know, what if that's not true? What if I am creative? Then what happens? And it's not like there's any effort in it, because there's no effort in I'm not creative. There's just actions that flow from there, like completely effortlessly. So what happens if I like talk to my clients, like, what happens if I put on a new set of clothes? Like, I am creative, that I am creative clothes. Then what happens? Then what actions happen? What behavior happens? It turns out painting happens. Retreats get run with an amazing artist, Lucy. You know, all kinds of things happen from there that I couldn't have ever dreamt would have happened even a year ago. But just from seeing that old conditioning, if you like, seeing it for what it is, seeing how innocent it was that it was acquired by the system, and then choosing to create a different possibility and stepping into that and seeing. And for me, it's just a game, like you say, like what happens if I play with something different? Like, I notice the old stuff and it's okay. And I consciously create a new experience, a new version of Vicki.
I love, like, in listening to you, that I'm hearing so many of the different teachings that I have listened to. You know, I absolutely heard the whole Byron Katie, question your thinking, think of something that is polar opposite to that, try it on for size, do you like it, do you want to keep it? All of this kind of thing. There's no have to's or musts, but it is like seeing the thinking that we are having that is running the show moment to moment, and noticing that, you know, whatever it is I'm doing, it's coming, you know, our actions come from the thoughts that we have that we believe to be true about ourselves, you know. And if we just look at those thoughts and kind of be, well, do I want that one? And I know, you know, you just using your imagination to sit there and think. I had a similar thing with the cold water swimming, because I had always had a story that when I go in cold water, I get cold and I'm cold all day, and I just can't do that. And then a couple of years ago, I just decided, you know, playing in this arena in the same way as you, what happens if I decide I'm a cold water swimmer?
Yes.
Just kind of decided I'm a cold water swimmer, just sort of announced it to myself one day, I'm a cold water swimmer. And then it was like, oh, okay, a cold water swimmer goes in cold water. Oh, okay, into the cold water we go then. And I loved it, and I still do. I do. You know, I was up in Scotland and swam with Julie not that long ago, in August actually, and that was a summertime one. But it is amazing, like you say. It's so, on the one hand, it is so ridiculously simple, because it is absolutely like looking at a story that you hold about yourself, and to me, it's using my imagination. And I don't think we're ever kind of taught this either. And I know, like, this whole I'm not creative, we'll often get to, you know, I'm 60 this year, we often get to an age and we don't realize that we have this. Like, I watch my grandchildren and the things that they imagine, you know, the things that they come out with, the things that they say, it's like, whoa, what, how do you get that from that? You know, it's that their imaginations are like wild and free and beautiful. And sort of over the years, we are kind of taught to squash that down a little bit, to kind of, no, let's look at reality. Don't get carried away in this dream world. And then we find ourselves in this place, and we don't. I know a lot of the people I work with at first, when I'm sort of saying, imagine what it would be like, and just a thing like that, you know, you have this story, I don't swim in cold water. So what if you couldn't think that, and you did have the thought, I am a cold water swimmer? What would happen? And they can't even, first of all, it's like, I don't know. And it really sort of shows we haven't, it's like any muscle or anything we do, we're not practiced at doing that. And I know, you know, part of the game here, and part of this exploration for me, is to get practiced at, yeah, what would happen if, you know, if I thought this and not this? And it's not that I have to do it, and I can go back to my original story if I like it better, you know, I don't have to, there's no pressure or anything. But it's like, okay, who would I be if I was, you know, a YouTube sensation? You know, if I've got this idea, I can't go on YouTube, my face can't be seen on, you know, if I've got those thoughts. So what would happen if I was the biggest and best YouTuber, you know, on this subject? Who would I be? And then just play in that arena for a little while in my mind, you know, no one else needs to know, don't have to share it with anyone, you can do it at the kitchen sink or while you're walking the dog or whatever, you don't have to. And then just, when we exercise our imagination like that, that is when we see the creativity. We begin to see who we actually are, what we are actually capable of. And I know for me, then some of those ideas are like, do you know what? I actually want to do this. and from there, amazing things happen.
Yeah, and I love that. And it, you know, like you say, you can play around with it. You can play around with it in your mind. And it's funny because I got I got pulled up by my coach yesterday, because so something that some of your listeners might be aware of is Steve Hardison's document, and the idea of kind of deliberately, if you like, the conscious creation of a new possibility. So it's seeing the old thinking, the old beliefs that you have acquired about yourself, and you know, seeing the innocence and forgiving that, and then, you know, what could be more true. You know, it's the Byron Katie kind of thing of what's more true than that, what could be more true once there's forgiveness kind of for that acquisition. And so I created one a couple of months ago, and I hadn't admitted it even to my coach. I just had it here. I was sort of like dabbling with it, you know, playing around with, well, what would happen if I show up to a meeting, or show up to a client as this, instead of the old kind of, you know, the old story of not good enough or whatever. And so I've been sort of playing around with it a bit, like you were saying, like, you know, walking the dog, doing the dishes, whatever, playing around with it, but in my own little, you know, safety sort of place, like not really speaking it. And I for whatever reason, I admitted it to my coach yesterday, and you know, he really urged me to really step into that, to speak it, to share it, because otherwise we are unconsciously speaking and sharing the old document. We all have one. We all have a document which is a set of statements of who we are. You know, I am a mum. I'm rubbish at knitting. I'm good at dog walking. You know, we've got a million labels on ourselves, and as you beautifully shared, whatever those labels are is how we behave. So we're doing it. We've got that statement anyway. So this sort of process is like, okay, well, what would, you know, let's just change some of those labels. Let's try and see what happens if I change them. But actually, you know, really stepping into that, not as a sort of tentative, like, oh, but it would be quite nice if I was actually good enough, you know, but I am good enough. I am enough, you know, and actually being that and seeing the actions just come from there.
Mm.
You know, like when we step into it, then behavior and action changes without effort. So if we go from, and there's an amazing, inspiring lady that that did the same training as me with Nicola about 6 months later, and she, I'm sure she won't mind me I won't say who she is, but in case she minds, but she had a realization that she had held this belief about herself that she was, can't remember the exact words, but like fat and useless, something like that. It was horrible. And so her whole life had been unconsciously there in the background. And so everything she did was coming from that place of being fat and useless. And, you know, she tried to diet, but of course it didn't work because she was fat and useless. And, you know, like, so it was just, she had this realization that wasn't true. And it was massive. I can't remember exactly what the realization was, but it was something along the lines of I am strong and healthy, something like that. And what has emerged from there in the last, I think it was about 6 months ago, probably, that she had that kind of just a sudden realization that of the non-truth of this thing, or she actually saw it and realized that it wasn't true. Stepping into I am strong and healthy, the transformation is insane.
Yeah.
Because actions came from there, and being strong and healthy meant she didn't want to eat junk food anymore. It wasn't like she was restricting herself or trying, or I must not do this, I must not. It was I'm strong and healthy. Strong and healthy people don't eat junk food. They just don't do that. Like people who swim, you know, cold water swim in cold water. You know, it's like people who are fit and strong and healthy, they eat well. They go to the gym, they lift weights. She is it's unbelievable what has happened for her, and it was effortless because she saw that this old bit of program wasn't true, and then there was a new one that was just so clearly more true. And from there, yeah, everything. And it's just, you know, that's it. I mean, we can all get that. We can. And I guess it's easier when you're working with a coach because because when you're in your story, you don't know it. It's like fish swimming in water. You don't know that there's water. It's what's there. It's invisible. So a lot of the acquired program is invisible to us.
Yeah, I think, I know for me, actually taking an honest look at what is happening on the outside of my life gives me clues as to what my story is.
Absolutely.
Like, then, you know, what I see, and I think sometimes that again can be, it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do, because you know, from all that you're saying there, and one of the biggest things that I have seen is this is very, very much, and this is something that I am stepping into. I'm really playing with this whole not being a victim of anything. And it is very surprising how many things we put ourselves up as a victim of. And even if that is our own programming and our own thought, I can't help it because that's my programming. The minute that we say, oh, there's nothing I can do here, then there's nothing we can do. You know, if that's who we are, if that's who we believe ourselves to be, we've stuck ourselves. So very much, you know, but from the place, if we can be brave enough to take an honest look at our own life and kind of look at our relationships, our work, whatever it is we show up to do, it will feed back to us what our programming is, what our beliefs are. You know, it will always do that. And like you say, sometimes it is so helpful to gently have someone else to help you tease that out. And we definitely, you know, well, certainly we can get to a place where people can say that to us and it's like, yeah, all right, okay, fair enough. Yeah, I want to change that and I want to do that. Our life doesn't lie. it's a little bit like, you know, when we look back at the beginning of what we were talking about here, and you sort of said, you know, you had no idea you were anxious, but if you had actually looked at what was playing out, what was going on, you would have had to have, you know, even though you're kind of like, no, I'm not an anxious person, it's like, the evidence says different.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have these ideas, and sometimes this surface thing of, yeah, I'm perfectly okay, and it's like, yeah, the evidence says different. You know, what is actually going on, because everything that we see, everything is mirroring something that is within us. And so if we do have the courage to go inside then and question that and look at that and just play with trying on a different statement, a different thing. And I think that for me, what I have seen when we play in that arena, it wakes something up in us. You know, something then kind of says, oh, okay, all right, try this, have a think of this, and these nudges and these breadcrumbs or whatever they are then present themselves as a way forward once we kind of, because there is an element to all of this that is beyond us, you know, the divine, the power behind life, whatever it is we call it, that is at play here. But that isn't something that is separate to us or is against us or is going to stop us. It's actually the polar opposite of that. You know, it's something that is within us, that if we have, you know, very often we have it set up that looking at what our you know, what our programming is, looking at these things is going to be too scary, it's going to kill us, it's going to, you know, we can't do it. But actually when we do it, it feels to me like the divine, like we can't outgive the universe. You know, when we do that, what we get back is tenfold for the little bit that we've moved forward. So
there's something about the stepping into the thing you most fear.
Yes.
The place you really don't want to go, that thing you really don't want to do. There's something about, like I've done a lot of work with Claire Diamond, and just one of the things that was always stuck with me is do the thing. That's one of the things that she shares, like do the thing that feels like life or death, like you know, like, and it is for the ego, right? It is for this idea of who we are. You know, for me, public speaking is something that I absolutely hated to do and had so much thinking about. The more that I've, you know, just been with the feeling of that, like utter terror of the idea of speaking in front of people, you know, really just being in the feeling of that, in the body, in the sensations, like just being with those sensations of, you know, like tummy churning, whatever, and noticing then what the mind's making up. Because then we're having access to that program, to the beliefs that are there. But to do the thing is to see that even when it's like the mind is creating that this is going to be like it's going to be so embarrassing, you're going to mess up, you're going to be an idiot, everyone's going to think this of you, blah blah blah. Like, to do it is a bit like doing a cold water thing. It's like seeing that doesn't tell the truth.
No.
And it's not who you are, and it's there's a kind of a healing process in that, like being with the sensations of all that, kind of embracing that and doing it and seeing that you're still alive. Like everything that the mind created would happen, generally doesn't come true, right? It's like you are fundamentally okay at all times, even when the mind is creating a story that you're going to die.
Crazy. Yeah, I love that. I love and I love that it's like we've been all over the place today with this exploration, and you know, I love that. I know one of the things I say is that it's all on the table. You know, there isn't, I know you said there isn't only one way to do this. There are so many ways. And when I look back at, you know, what I have done and the things that have worked for me, it's been a mixture of all sorts of things.
Oh, yeah.
It hasn't just been a one size fits all. Even on my journey, I can see there have been times when it has been through like total insight that looked like I had zero to do with it. So, you know, how can I tell you to do that? Because I did nothing, just this idea, or the, you know, this moment of seeing something popped into my head that felt like it was a divine intervention, and I had zero idea how that happened. And then I see, you know, what that opened up for me was the possibility, like you say, you know, the document and deliberately creating who I'm being. And I can also see I have totally unconsciously created amazing things for myself and terrible things for myself.
Yeah.
And it's like I created some of the most amazing things for myself totally and utterly without any knowledge that I was doing that. I just thought that, you know, whatever that happened, I was lucky, or whatever. But through understanding the process of the beliefs and how we think of ourselves, the actions that causes, I can see, oh yeah, that was exactly the same process. I just, you know, I have got 3 amazing children, and I can remember, you know, from a very young age, I was going to have children. That was it. That was who I am. That was what was going to happen. And I can look now and see how many things were sort of going against me, if you like, in that, but absolutely not. Like a little toddler who wants a sweet. I am so damn clear about who I am. And it amazes me. And then I can see I had that kind of thinking about things that weren't helpful, that I wish I had never.
Exactly.
and all of it, you know, in the mix. And I kind of see, actually, you know, all of that is totally the fact of insight. There is nobody who doesn't have those. It's like snakes and ladders. You know, there's nobody who doesn't at some point come to a ladder that takes them, cuts out a huge chunk of whatever it is. But equally, if that ladder isn't appearing there, we can build our own ladder step by step by step. As we are doing this, it's all on the table. You know, it's all a possibility. And all of these beautiful teachings that we are so available to us these days, you know, with the Steve Hardison movement, with Sydney Banks and the 3 principles, with Abraham and you know, the law of attraction, and Byron Katie is a personal favorite of mine. There are so many beautiful teachings out there that are so available. And to me, it's like, if something resonates with us, listen to anything. If you don't like it and it doesn't fit for you, forget it, move on.
Absolutely.
Don't worry about it.
Absolutely.
If it resonates, great, you know, do it. So
and all of those people, like I said at the beginning, like everything points back to the same thing. That there is wholeness, peace, love, literally here right now in this moment. You know, that's what we are. And then in comes all the objections, the thoughts, the beliefs, you know, that covers it up. That's and everything is pointing to that. Every religion, you know, everything is pointing to this.
Absolutely.
And the presence to that, and being present to that and with that is a beautiful thing, because from there then everything becomes, you know, the next thing is obvious, the next step is obvious, the next person to reach out to speak to the next thing to read, next thing to listen to is there, it's obvious to us.
I have loved that. What a great conversation. So if anybody wants to, you know more about you, reach out to you, I will put stuff underneath this video on my YouTube channel, but where can they find you? Where is the best place to find you?
Well, you can find me on Facebook, Vicki Montague, and I have got a website which is freefromlimits.co.uk, and there's a contact form on there, and there's podcasts and blogs and information on how to work with me on there. So
cool. Thank you so much. That has been such fun. Thank you.
Oh, it's been lovely. Thank you for having me.
It's been great. My pleasure. My pleasure.
Bye.